The woods had always been a place of solace for me, a sanctuary where I could escape the monotony of daily life. However, the tranquility of those towering trees was about to be shattered by an unspeakable horror that would forever taint the way I saw the forest. It all started innocently enough. My friends, Jake, Sarah, and I decided to embark on a weekend camping trip deep into the heart of the woods. We craved an adventure, a break from the mundane routine that had gripped our lives. The allure of the untouched wilderness was too tempting to resist. The journey began on a crisp Friday morning. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a dappled pattern on the forest floor. We were armed with backpacks, sleeping bags, and the shared excitement that bound us together. The dense canopy overhead created an enchanting atmosphere as we ventured further into the woods, leaving behind the familiar world. As the day wore on, we stumbled upon an ancient, dilapidated cabin hidden in a small clearing. The door creaked open, revealing a musty interior that seemed frozen in time. Despite the unsettling feeling that crept over us, we decided to make camp there for the night. A decaying fireplace stood as a silent witness to the countless stories that cabin could tell. And yet, we paid no heed to the silent warnings it whispered. Night fell, and the woods came alive with mysterious sounds, rustling leaves, distant howls, and the occasional snap of a twig. The flickering fire cast dancing shadows on the cabin walls, heightening the sense of isolation. We huddled close, sharing ghost stories and laughter, attempting to mask the unease that lingered in the air. As the clock struck midnight, an eerie stillness settled over the forest. The crackling fire seemed to grow dimmer, as if even the flames were hesitant to disturb the delicate balance between the seen and the unseen. That's when we heard it, a distant, haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the heart of the woods. Mesmerized, we exchanged curious glances before silently agreeing to follow the spectral tune. The melody led us deeper into the darkness, each step more uncertain than the last. The trees closed in around us, their gnarled branches creating an impenetrable barrier between us and the safety of the cabin. Yet, an otherworldly compulsion pushed us forward, the haunting notes echoing in our minds. As we ventured further, the underbrush grew thicker, and the moonlight struggled to penetrate the dense foliage. The melody intensified, its hypnotic quality causing a disorienting sensation. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling, pulling us deeper into an abyss of the unknown. Suddenly, the woods fell silent. The once enchanting melody morphed into a dissonant hum that resonated through the air, sending shivers down our spines. Panic set in, and we realized the gravity of our situation. We were lost, ensnared in a sinister symphony that seemed to mock our naive curiosity. That's when we noticed the first sign that something was horribly wrong. Jake, who had been walking beside us just moments before, was gone, vanished without a trace. Panic seized our hearts as we called out his name into the oppressive darkness, our voices swallowed by the suffocating silence. Frantically, we retraced our steps, stumbling through the maze of trees and tangled vines. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to mock our futile attempts to find our friend. As we reached the clearing where the cabin stood, dread settled in the pit of my stomach. There, in the center of the clearing, was Jake's backpack, discarded as if he had never been there. The weight of the situation pressed down on us, and fear constricted our hearts. We were no longer on a casual camping trip. We were caught in a malevolent force that defied comprehension. Sarah and I exchanged horrified glances, the unspoken understanding that our reality had shifted into a nightmare. Determined to find Jake, we pressed on, the dissonant hum guiding us deeper into the labyrinth of trees. The darkness clung to us like a suffocating shroud, and every step forward felt like a descent into a bottomless abyss. Our surroundings warped and twisted, the once familiar forest, now an alien landscape that defied logic. As we delved deeper, another unsettling realization dawned upon us. The haunting hum was not alone. Faint whispers, indiscernible but undeniably present, accompanied the dissonant melody. It was as if unseen entities reveled in our confusion, taunting us with their elusive presence. The forest became a nightmarish kaleidoscope of shifting shadows and spectral shapes. Sarah and I stumbled forward, driven by desperation and an instinctive need to escape the clutches of the malevolent force that held us captive. And then, just as suddenly as Jake had vanished, Sarah had disappeared. One moment, she was beside me, her eyes wide with terror, and the next, she was gone, swallowed by the impenetrable darkness. I screamed her name into the void, but the only response was the echo of my own voice, hauntingly lonely in its reverberation. Alone and consumed by a paralyzing fear, I sank to my knees in the suffocating silence. The dissonant hum continued its torment, now a cacophony of malevolent laughter that seemed to mock my vulnerability. I was trapped in a nightmare, surrounded by an unseen malevolence that reveled in the anguish of those who dared to venture into the woods. Time lost its meaning as I stumbled through the ever-shifting landscape. The boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred, and the forest seemed to feed off my fear, distorting itself into grotesque shapes and grotesque figures. The dissonant hum reached a deafening crescendo, driving me to the brink of madness. Just when I thought I could endure no more, the woods spat me out into the cold light of dawn. I found myself on the outskirts of the forest, disoriented and battered. The dissonant hum faded into the distance, leaving behind an eerie silence. The weight of loss and the unanswered questions hung heavy in the air. Jake and Sarah were gone, swallowed by the insatiable hunger of the woods. I stumbled back to town, haunted by the memories of that harrowing night, forever changed by the malevolent force that lurked within the shadows. To this day, the woods remain a forbidden realm, a place where the boundary between reality and nightmare blurs. The dissonant hum still echoes in the recesses of my mind, a haunting reminder of the unspeakable horrors that claimed my friends and shattered the illusion of the familiar world. The woods, once a sanctuary, now stand as a testament to the darkness that lies hidden within the heart of nature. The whispers of the lost souls who disappeared into the woods linger in the wind, a chilling warning to those who dare to venture too close to the edge of the unknown. The forest loomed before us, a tangle of ancient trees and shadows that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, and the only sound that reached our ears was the crunch of dead leaves beneath our boots. My friend, Jake, and I had always been drawn to the unknown, seeking out the thrill of the forbidden. Little did we know that this forest held secrets beyond our wildest nightmares. It all started with a rumor, whispered among the locals of our small town. They spoke of a ghost that haunted the heart of the woods, a spectre that fed on the fear of those who dared to enter. Most dismissed it as the ramblings of superstitious minds, but Jake and I, fueled by the arrogance of youth, saw it as an opportunity for an adventure that would set us apart from the mundane. It was on a cold autumn evening that we stood at the edge of the forest, our breath visible in the crisp air. The setting sun cast long, eerie shadows that danced among the trees like malevolent spirits. We exchanged a nervous glance, our excitement tinged with a hint of trepidation. Still, the thrill of the unknown beckoned us forward, and we plunged into the heart of the forest. The deeper we ventured, the thicker the darkness became. The trees seemed to close in on us, their twisted branches forming a canopy that blocked out the fading light. I could feel the weight of the shadows pressing down on my chest, and an icy chill ran down my spine. Despite the unnerving atmosphere, Jake and I pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the forest ghost. As we walked, the air grew colder, and an otherworldly fog slithered around the tree trunks. Shapes moved in the mist, indistinct and haunting. I shook my head, attributing the illusions to my overactive imagination. Yet, a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach, warning me that we were not alone. Hours passed, and the forest seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, Panic set in as we realized that the trees had become an impenetrable maze, and every step forward led us deeper into the unknown. We tried retracing our path, but it was as if the forest itself had shifted, mocking our attempts to escape. The air was thick with an oppressive energy, and the silence was broken only by our frantic footsteps and labored breaths. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed through the trees, a low, mournful wail that sent shivers down our spines. Jake and I exchanged a terrified look, the color draining from our faces. The forest ghost was no longer a tale told in hushed tones. It was a malevolent force that surrounded us. As the wails grew louder, so did the shadows that clung to the trees. Figures danced in the periphery of our vision, flickering in and out of existence. I stumbled over gnarled roots and decaying leaves, my heart pounding in my chest. The forest itself seemed to be alive, a sentient entity that reveled in our fear. In our desperate attempt to escape, we became separated. Panic set in as I called out for Jake, my voice swallowed by the oppressive silence. I stumbled through the twisted underbrush, branches clawing at my clothes. The wails of the ghost seemed to surround me, disorienting and maddening. Suddenly, I saw a dim light flickering in the distance. Relief washed over me as I stumbled towards it, convinced that Jake had found a way out. However, as I approached, my hope turned to horror. The light emanated from a spectral figure, its face obscured by shadows. It reached out towards me with skeletal fingers, and a guttural whisper filled my ears. "Leave this place," it moaned, the words sending a chill down my spine. "You tread on sacred ground, and the forest claims all who enter." I tried to turn and run, but an invisible force held me in place. The ghostly figure drew closer, its hollow eyes piercing my soul. I felt a cold presence seeping into my very being, draining the warmth from my body. Desperation set in. I struggled against the unseen bonds. Just when I thought I would be consumed by the ghostly apparition, the fog parted, revealing Jake standing a few feet away. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide with terror. Without a word, he extended a trembling hand towards me. The spectral figure faded away, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. We stumbled out of the forest, gasping for breath, as if we had surfaced from the depths of a watery abyss. The sun had long set, and the night air felt strangely calm. As we made our way back to town, we exchanged haunted glances, our minds unable to comprehend the horrors we had witnessed. In the days that followed, Jake and I were plagued by nightmares. The forest ghost lingered in our dreams, its mournful wails echoing through the darkness. We tried to convince ourselves that it was merely a shared hallucination, a product of fear and exhaustion. But deep down, we knew that the forest held secrets beyond our understanding. The experience left an indelible mark on us, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left untouched. The forest, with its ancient trees and ghostly inhabitants, became a forbidden realm in our Minsa place, where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, and where the boundaries of reality blurred into nightmare. The dense foreboding forest stretched out before us like an endless sea of shadows. My friend, Jake, and I had always been drawn to the mysterious allure of the woods, captivated by the whispered tales of ancient spirits and unseen horrors that lurked within. We were avid thrill seekers, always in search of the next adrenaline rush, and the ominous woods seemed like the perfect setting for our latest adventure. It all started innocently enough. We had heard rumors of a hidden trail, a path that led deep into the heart of the forest, where few dared to tread. Locals spoke of an unsettling silence that enveloped those woods, broken only by the distant cries of strange creatures. We were intrigued, our curiosity overriding any sense of caution that might have held us back. On a chilly autumn afternoon, we set out, backpacks filled with essentials, cameras slung over our shoulders, and an air of excitement that masked the subtle undercurrent of unease. The trailhead greeted us with a weathered sign, its paint peeling and words barely legible. "Beware the woods," it seemed to whisper, but we laughed it off, dismissing it as the product of overactive imaginations. The path wound its way through the towering trees, their branches creating a dense canopy overhead that blocked out the sunlight. The air felt heavy, with an unnatural stillness, and the rustle of leaves beneath our boots echoed ominously. As we ventured deeper, the forest seemed to swallow us whole, each step taking us farther from the familiarity of the outside world. Hours passed, and the woods began to play tricks on our minds. Shadows morphed into sinister shapes, and the distant sounds of our own footsteps seemed to be accompanied by the faint whispers of unseen entities. Still, we pressed on, lured by an invisible force that beckoned us further into the heart of darkness. It was when we stumbled upon an ancient, dilapidated cabin that a shiver ran down my spine. The structure seemed to defy the laws of time, standing as a decrepit relic of a forgotten era. A foul stench hung in the air around it, a sickly sweet odor that made my stomach churn. Against our better judgment, we pushed open the creaking door, revealing a single, flickering candle that barely illuminated the shadows within. The cabin's interior told a tale of abandonment and decay. Dust-covered furniture lay scattered haphazardly, as if frozen in time. Cobwebs hung like delicate tapestries, and the air was thick with a palpable sense of malevolence. Despite the ominous atmosphere, Jake and I continued our exploration, drawn deeper into the mysteries of the forsaken dwelling. It was in the darkest corner of the cabin that we found a tattered journal, its pages filled with the frantic scrawls of someone who had long lost their grip on sanity. The entries spoke of an ancient curse that plagued those who dared to venture too far into the woods. Disappearing people, the author claimed, taken by entities that thrived in the shadows. The words blurred together in a mad symphony of fear and desperation. A sudden draft extinguished the candle, plunging us into complete darkness. Panic set in as we fumbled for our flashlights, their feeble beams revealing distorted shadows that seemed to dance and contort around us. The air itself felt charged with an otherworldly energy, and a guttural growl echoed through the cabin. In that moment, Jake and I felt an invisible force pulling us apart. The shadows converged, swallowing him whole. He screamed my name. I reached out, desperation coursing through my veins, but his form dissolved into the darkness, leaving only the haunting echo of his final plea. I was alone, engulfed by a suffocating silence that seemed to mock my every breath. The journal's warnings echoed in my mind, and the weight of the curse bore down on me like a vice. Fear paralyzed my limbs, but survival instincts kicked in, propelling me towards the door. The woods outside had transformed into an alien landscape, twisted and distorted, and a haunting melody whispered through the rustling leaves. As I stumbled through the oppressive darkness, the path itself seemed to shift and warp, leading me in circles. Each step became a struggle against an unseen force that sought to confound and disorient. Whispers surrounded me, their unintelligible words a cacophony of despair. Time lost its meaning as I wandered through the labyrinthine depths of the cursed woods. The faces of those who had disappeared flickered in the shadows, their vacant eyes haunting my every move. I could feel the malevolent entities watching, waiting for the perfect moment to claim me as their own. Exhaustion gnawed at my bones, and despair threatened to consume me. But just as all hope seemed lost, I stumbled upon an ancient altar, a macabre display of bones and symbols that spoke of a dark ritual. The air pulsed with an unholy energy, and I knew that this place held the key to breaking the curse. With trembling hands, I gathered the remnants of a forgotten age, arranging them in a desperate plea for salvation. The forest seemed to hold its breath as I uttered incantations, the words ancient and foreign on my tongue. The air crackled with a malevolent force, and for a moment, it felt as if the very fabric of reality trembled. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, the oppressive darkness lifted. The twisted trees receded, and the foreboding shadows retreated. The curse had been broken, but at a cost. Forest had claimed Jake and others before him, their fates intertwined with the malevolent entities that lurked within. As I emerged from the woods, the first rays of dawn painted the horizon in hues of pink and gold. The once silent forest now echoed with the sounds of waking birds and rustling leaves. I stumbled into the clearing, my body battered and my mind haunted by the horrors I had witnessed. The authorities found no trace of Jake or the others who had disappeared. The forest remained an enigma, its secrets buried beneath layers of foliage and ancient whispers. I became a cautionary tale, a survivor forever marked by the unseen terrors that lurked within the woods. The experience left me changed, haunted by the knowledge that some mysteries are better left unsolved. The forest, with its twisted beauty and malevolent secrets, stood as a testament to the fragile boundary between the known and the unknowable. And as I gazed back at the looming trees, a shiver ran down my spine, a lingering reminder that sometimes the price of curiosity is far greater than we can ever imagine. Darkness had already swallowed the edges of the forest as my friend Alex and I approached her entrance. The haunted forest, as the locals called it, had an unsettling reputation that sent shivers down our spines. We were adrenaline junkies, always seeking the next thrill, and the rumors of eerie sounds, ghostly apparitions, and the occasional disappearance only fueled our excitement. The moon cast an eerie glow through the thick canopy as we ventured deeper into the woods. Twisted branches formed gnarled arches overhead, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. The air was heavy, with an unnatural stillness, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and distant creaks that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. "Are you sure about this, Jake?" Alex's voice quivered, betraying his attempt at nonchalance. I chuckled nervously. "Come on, man. It's just a bunch of stories. There's nothing in these woods but trees and animals." But deep down, a small seed of doubt had taken root in my mind. The forest seemed to close in on us, the shadows morphing into sinister shapes that danced just out of sight. As we continued, the oppressive silence became deafening, broken only by our footsteps on the uneven ground. We stumbled upon an ancient, dilapidated sign, barely visible in the dim light. It read, "Welcome to the Forbidden Grove, Abandon Hope. All ye who enter here." A chill ran down my spine, but I dismissed it as a cheap attempt to scare off trespassers. The path narrowed, and the trees loomed like silent sentinels. Alex and I exchanged uneasy glances, but our determination to conquer the haunted forest pushed us forward. Our flashlight beams pierced the darkness, revealing twisted roots that seemed to writhe beneath the surface of the forest floor. As we delved deeper, the air became thick with an indescribable energy. Whispers, like distant echoes, played tricks on our ears. I shook my head, attributing the sounds to my imagination running wild. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching our every move. The path led us to a clearing bathed in an otherworldly glow. Moonlight filtered through the tangled branches, revealing a circle of ancient stones. In the center stood an old, gnarled tree, its twisted limbs reaching towards the heavens. A haunting wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it the voices of the forgotten. Alex's breath caught as he stared at the tree. "Jake, this place gives me the creeps. Let's go back." But something about the scene fascinated me. The air crackled with an eerie energy, and I felt drawn to the ancient tree. Ignoring Alex's protests, I approached the stones, my hand brushing against the rough surface. As I reached the tree, a voice echoed in my mind, a chorus of whispers that seemed to speak a language long forgotten. "Jake, snap out of it." Alex's urgent voice pulled me from the trance. I turned to him, disoriented. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" "Jake, we need to leave. Now." Reluctantly, I tore myself away from the tree, and we retraced our steps. The forest, once silent, now seemed to come alive with unseen movement. Shadows flitted in the corners of our vision, and the air pulsed with an ominous energy. The path twisted and turned, disorienting us. Panic gnawed at the edges of my consciousness as we realized we were lost. Every tree, every rock, seemed like a distorted version of something familiar. The forest had become a labyrinth, and we were trapped in its grasp. Hours passed, and fatigue set in. The haunting wind carried the echoes of distant wails, and the temperature dropped, sending shivers down our spines. Alex and I stumbled forward, driven more by fear than purpose. Then, we heard a guttural growl that reverberated through the trees. Panic seized us as we scanned our surroundings, our flashlights revealing nothing but the impenetrable darkness. "Did you hear that, Alex?" I whispered. He nodded, eyes wide with terror. "We're not alone." As we pressed on, the forest seemed to come alive with malevolent energy. Shadows coalesced into sinister forms, and the air hummed with an otherworldly resonance. Our footsteps quickened, but the growls persisted, drawing closer with each passing moment. Suddenly, the path opened up to a small clearing, and a bone-chilling sight awaited us. The gnarled tree from the ancient stones stood in the center, its twisted limbs casting grotesque shadows. And beneath it, a pair of glowing eyes stared back at us from the darkness. Fear rooted us to the spot as a creature emerged, its form indistinct and shrouded in shadows. It moved with an unnatural grace, its growls echoing in the still night. Panic surged, and we turned to flee, but the forest seemed to conspire against us. The once familiar path twisted and morphed, leading us in circles. Alex stumbled and fell, and as I turned to help him up, the creature lunged. The air crackled with malevolence as its claws closed down him. I screamed, helpless, as Alex was dragged into the shadows. Frantic, I ran, the forest closing in around me. The distant wails and ghostly whispers became a cacophony, drowning out all reason. I stumbled through the labyrinth, heart pounding, until exhaustion overcame me. As dawn broke, I emerged from the haunted woods, disheveled and traumatized. The locals found me babbling about glowing eyes, twisted trees, and the haunting wind that echoed the cries of the lost. Search parties were sent into the forest, but there was no sign of Alex. Haunted by that night, I became a shell of my former self. The whispers of the forbidden grove echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked in the heart of the haunted forest. And as the years passed, I often found myself alone in the dead of night, listening to the wind that carried with it the wails of the forgotten, wondering if Alex's voice was among them. The cold wind whispered through the ancient trees as I stumbled over gnarled roots and decaying leaves. The moon cast eerie shadows on the path ahead, and the dense canopy overhead seemed to swallow the feeble light that managed to escape through the twisted branches. My heart pounded in my chest as I trudged deeper into the haunted forest, the oppressive darkness pressing in on all sides. My sister, Emily, and I had always been drawn to the mysterious and the unknown. We were avid explorers, seeking out hidden places and forgotten realms. When we heard the legends surrounding the haunted forest, we couldn't resist the allure of the forbidden. Whispers of lost souls, ghostly apparitions, and the echoes of ancient curses lured us into the heart of the darkness. It all started innocently enough. Armed with flashlights, a tattered map, and the thrill of adventure, Emily and I entered the edge of the haunted forest. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy as we ventured further, the shadows closing in around us. The rustling leaves seemed to carry the voices of the restless spirits that dwelled within. As we followed the winding path, a sense of unease settled over us. The forest exhaled a chilling breath, and the temperature dropped drastically. Emily shivered beside me, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "We're getting close," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. The map in my hand seemed to morph into a cryptic puzzle. The landmarks we expected to find were distorted, and the once clear trail now twisted and turned like a serpent, leading us deeper into the heart of the unknown. Emily and I exchanged uneasy glances, but the thrill of the forbidden kept us moving forward. As we delved further into the forest, the trees seemed to come alive with sinister whispers. I could almost make out the words, a haunting symphony of voices that spoke of ancient tragedies and the lingering sorrow of the lost souls trapped within the woods. Emily clutched my arm, her nails digging into my flesh as the voices grew louder. The flashlight beams flickered and danced, casting erratic shadows that seemed to move independently of the trees. I could feel a weight on my chest, a suffocating pressure that made it harder to breathe. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind, but I pushed it aside. We were explorers, seekers of the unknown, and fear was just another obstacle to overcome. Suddenly, the forest fell silent. The wind ceased its mournful howl, and the rustling leaves stilled. Emily and I stood frozen, our senses on high alert. A distant sound echoed through the trees, a soft, haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. It seemed to pull us deeper into the heart of the forest, a siren's call that we were powerless to resist. Against my better judgment, we followed the ethereal music. The twisted path led us to a clearing bathed in an otherworldly glow. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak, its branches reaching towards the heavens like skeletal fingers. The haunting melody emanated from the tree, and as we approached, the ground beneath our feet seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. I felt a sudden compulsion to touch the gnarled trunk of the oak. As my fingers made contact, a surge of images flooded my mind, visions of a bygone era, of people in tattered clothes and hollow eyes. The forest was a witness to unspeakable horrors, a silent spectator to the tragedies that had unfolded within its shadowy embrace. Emily and I stumbled back, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The forest around us seemed to come alive, the ancient trees whispering secrets that we were never meant to know. In that moment, we realized the gravity of our mistake. The haunted forest was no mere legend. It was a living, breathing entity, and we had trespassed into its realm. As we retraced our steps, panic set in. The once familiar path now twisted and turned in disorienting loops, leading us in circles. The forest seemed to mock our attempts to escape, its malevolent presence closing in on us from all sides. The voices grew louder, their mournful wails echoing through the trees. Emily and I stumbled through the darkness, desperation etched across our faces. We called out to each other, our voices swallowed by the oppressive silence. Time lost its meaning as the haunted forest played tricks on our senses, distorting reality itself. Then, in the distance, a dim light flickered like a beacon of hope. We stumbled towards it, our weary bodies driven by the instinct for survival. The light led us to a dilapidated cabin, its windows shattered and door creaking ominously in the wind. With no other options, we entered the decaying structure, hoping to find refuge from the encroaching darkness. The interior of the cabin was suffused with an eerie glow, the walls adorned with faded paintings that depicted scenes of despair and anguish. A soft whimpering sound echoed through the desolate space, and we followed it to a small room at the back of the cabin. There, huddled in the corner, were two spectral figures, the lost souls of sisters who had met a tragic end within the haunted forest. Their hollow eyes stared at us, and their translucent forms seemed to flicker in and out of existence. The haunting melody that had drawn us into the heart of the forest emanated from the souls, a mournful lament for lives cut short. As the realization dawned on us, the cabin began to tremble, its walls groaning under the weight of ancient sorrow. The lost souls reached out to us, their ghostly hands brushing against our skin. In that moment, Emily and I understood the price of our curiosity. We were bound to the haunted forest, forever entwined with the tragic tales of those who had come before us. The darkness swallowed us whole, and the haunted forest claimed to more lost souls.